The chamber of the Galactic Council was always a place of control and order. Here, thousands of alien leaders from across the galaxy gathered to decide laws, trade, and war. It was a place where no voice was louder than another, where silence itself was a sign of balance. But on this day the silence carried weight, not of peace, but of something unknown pressing against every mind. The walls of the chamber glowed with soft light, yet no one looked at them. All eyes were fixed on the enormous display at the center of the hall. What they saw was not supposed to exist. The image showed a shadow moving slowly in the black of space. It was a shape that seemed to stretch forever, longer than any cruiser or battle carrier they had ever built. It moved without hurry, without sound, as though the rest of the galaxy had no power to touch it. The alien leaders whispered among themselves, their voices heavy with unease. The Council had seen fleets of 100 ships. They had seen weapons that could melt the surface of a planet, but this was different. This was something alive only in nightmare, now given form before their eyes. The counselors leaned forward as scanners tried to pierce the veil around the ship. Streams of data filled the air in glowing lines, but the information was broken, unreadable. Their most advanced machines could not tell them the composition, could not trace the power source, could not measure the defenses. It was as if the ship had been born from shadows and armed with silence. A fear spread through the chamber, not spoken yet felt. A fear that made the most powerful species feel small. A voice, deep and calm, broke the stillness of the chamber. It was the voice of the council speaker, who had lived through centuries of war and knew the weight of every enemy the galaxy had faced. But even he trembled when he spoke. He asked what system had given birth to such a machine. What empire had the resources to create something so vast? No answer came from the counselors, only stares at the screen. Their maps of known space had no mark for this vessel, no history of its design. The warship drifted closer, each passing second making its scale clearer. Beside it, a fleet of council ships looked like insects. The difference in size was not a matter of meters, but of entire cities stacked upon cities. The alien admirals whispered to each other, asking if it was even possible for such a ship to move. But it moved, steady and confident, without a single signal of effort. The chamber filled with a heavy silence, as if even the air had chosen to stop breathing. Debate began among the council. Some demanded an immediate defense response. They wanted fleets mobilized, weapons charged, interceptors launched before the unknown vessel reached council space. Others held back, warning that a strike against something so powerful without knowledge would invite destruction on a scale none could measure. The chamber boiled with fear hidden behind words of reason, yet everyone knew the truth. Fear had returned to the galaxy, and it had come in the shape of a warship. The display flickered. For a brief moment, a symbol appeared on the ship's hull, something simple yet sharp. The chamber leaned closer, translators worked, and then froze. It was no alien mark, no emblem of the council races, but something entirely new. One word followed, spoken in tones that reached every corner of the chamber, translated into every alien tongue. The voice was strong, not mechanical, but human. The word was simple, spoken with clarity that cut through centuries of pride and control. The word was humanity. The chamber fell silent again, but this silence was different. This was the silence of realization. The silence of minds breaking apart as they tried to connect what they thought they knew with what stood before them. Humanity was a young species, one the council had dismissed as primitive, still bound to their small world, still blind to the depth of the galaxy. They had been ignored, considered unworthy of attention. Yet now, before the most powerful council in the stars, it was humanity that stood in judgment. The speaker tried to control the chamber. He reminded them of records that described humanity as latecomers, fragile and violent, incapable of building anything beyond the simplest fleets. But those words sounded hollow now, burned away by the shadow of the ship that dwarfed them all. For centuries, the council had told itself that peace was certain, that no new power could ever threaten them again. Yet here was proof that certainty was an illusion. Fear spread further, not just among the leaders but across every watching system. The broadcast of the arrival had reached billions, and in every world aliens stopped their lives to watch the black silhouette glide through the stars. In every home and every city, beings who had never felt fear from another species felt it now. They felt it in the silence of their hearts, in the weight that pressed upon them even though they were far away. The Titan Warship moved closer. Its size filled the screen until the chamber felt crushed beneath its image. The stars behind it seemed to vanish, swallowed by the dark metal and sharp edges. The counselors whispered in broken voices, each asking the same question. What did the humans want? No answer came. The ship did not fire. It did not speak again. It only moved, steady and silent, into the space that had always belonged to the council. Every leader in that chamber felt the same truth in their hearts. This was not an attack. This was not a warship sent to destroy. This was a message written in steel and shadow. A message that said the galaxy was no longer what they believed. Humanity had been dismissed, ignored, forgotten. But now, in a single moment, it had announced itself not as a child among giants, but as a giant among children. The council speaker lowered his eyes, and for the first time in centuries he felt powerless. The galaxy had lived without fear for too long, but now, staring at the endless shape of the human Titan, he felt the old truth return. Power belonged not to those who claimed it, but to those who could hold the silence of every chamber in their hands. Humanity had done so with a single ship, and the fear it brought would never leave again. The warship moved slowly across the black of space, and the galaxy seemed to shrink in its shadow. The council chamber that had always been filled with calm voices now trembled with whispers of fear. No one wished to be the first to speak, yet the silence pressed heavier than stone. Every eye stared at the ship that refused to reveal its secrets. Alien scanners screamed with warnings, yet every report came back the same. The vessel was unreadable. Its core was hidden. Its shields could not be measured. It was as though the warship was wrapped in a skin of mystery, a mask no technology could pierce. The council sent fleets to intercept, small groups of cruisers that floated near the massive vessel like insects near a mountain. They circled carefully, sending out signals of greeting, signals of warning, signals demanding identification. No answer came. The Titan Warship gave no sound, no code, no symbol, only the steady hum of something beyond understanding. Each cruiser broadcasted attempts at communication, but the ship drifted onward, as if the presence of others did not matter. Inside the chamber, the debate deepened. Some demanded to launch full attack formations before it reached populated systems. Others urged caution, warning that to strike blindly at such power was like striking at a storm, an act of suicide. The speaker tried to control the storm of voices, yet even his words failed to calm the fear. What troubled them most was not only the warship's size, but its silence. A ship that powerful should roar with energy, should blaze with signals and warnings, but this one whispered nothing. Its silence spoke louder than any threat. Then, without warning, the chamber lights flickered as though touched by a presence. The ship sent out a pulse, one so vast that every system in orbit felt it at once. Screens turned white, sound burst in sharp tones, and then words appeared across every display. Not many words, not long messages, only one simple truth that made the chamber fall to stillness again. A voice, clear and human, echoed into the minds of all who listened. It said only one word, the name of its makers: humanity. The moment the word filled the chamber, a wave of disbelief followed. The counselors shifted in their seats, eyes wide, voices shaking. Humanity was a name they remembered only faintly. A species on a small world, one that had been noted in records but ignored for their weakness. They had no fleets worthy of mention, no technology worth studying. They had been marked as too violent, too chaotic, too fragile to ever rise among the stars. And yet here they stood, not with words of begging, not with calls for alliance, but with a vessel that shattered every measure of power. The speaker ordered for more scans, but again the reports came back broken. The Titan's core remained beyond measure, its armor beyond comparison, its weapons invisible but felt in the tremble of space around it. Council admirals whispered to each other. They compared it with their greatest dreadnoughts, but none came close. It was not just larger. It was built with a design that made their own work look like toys. The way it absorbed light, the way it moved without sound, the way it silenced systems without firing a single shot. This was not only power, it was mastery. Across alien worlds, people watched the broadcasts. Beings with wings, with scales, with minds older than humanity itself, all stopped their daily lives to watch a ship move in silence. They whispered to their children, to their leaders, to their gods, asking how such a young species could create something so vast. Fear took root not in the chamber alone, but in every city, every home, every world. Fear was not shouted, it was whispered, and whispers carried faster than any fleet. The alien cruisers that circled the Titan began to test its limits. They launched probe after probe, sending machines to scan the surface, but each probe was swallowed by the silence. They vanished without a trace, no explosion, no return signal, as if they had been erased from existence. The admirals ordered caution, but the crews felt unease. No ship that large should be so patient. No warship that powerful should remain still. Yet the Titan remained calm, unmoved, like a predator waiting to see if prey would run. In the council chamber, the debate shifted again. Some leaders began to whisper of opportunity. If humanity had created such power, then perhaps alliance could bring them safety. Others whispered of destruction, saying humanity must be crushed before more ships appeared. The chamber divided between those who saw hope and those who saw doom, but both sides carried fear in their eyes. It was no longer a question of if the Titan Warship could destroy them, but if humanity chose to. The speaker rose once more and demanded patience. He warned that fear could drive them to madness, and madness would lead to ruin, yet even his voice shook. He had lived through wars where empires clashed with thousands of ships, but he had never felt powerless as he did now. The Titan had not fired a single shot, but it had won the first battle. It had broken the courage of the galaxy with only its presence. The warship drifted further into council space. Its path was slow, deliberate, without hurry. Each move seemed measured like the steps of a giant through a land of insects. The chamber followed its every movement, their hearts heavy with dread. The speaker asked for silence, and silence returned, but not the silence of order. It was the silence of fear, the silence of beings who had looked upon something they could not explain. For centuries, the council had believed itself to be the center of all power. They believed no new species could rise beyond their control. But the Titan Warship told them otherwise. It told them their galaxy was larger than they had dreamed, and that fear, once buried, had returned. Humanity had spoken only one word, yet that word echoed louder than all the laws and all the battles that came before. The name of a species the council had once dismissed was now the name that filled every heart with dread. Humanity. And still, the warship moved forward, slow and unstoppable, carrying silence heavier than any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. The Titan Warship hung in the void, its vast frame blotting out the stars as if the universe itself bent around its presence. The council fleets kept their distance now, no longer sending probes, no longer daring to circle too close. Every admiral who had once argued for attack now sat silent, watching with unease as the human creation drifted without fear. It was not movement that terrified them, but stillness. Stillness meant control. Stillness meant confidence. No species in known space had ever held such quiet power, and the council leaders felt their courage dissolving under its weight. The ship's surface shimmered faintly, not with color but with shifting shadows, as though the metal drank the starlight instead of reflecting it. Even their most powerful sensors could not touch it. The warship remained unreadable, a black mystery. The chamber of the council filled with arguments once more, some voices breaking in anger, others shaking in dread. Should they act now before the unknown revealed its purpose, or should they wait, hoping for mercy? Every word was thick with desperation, yet no decision was reached because no decision felt safe. Then the warship moved. It turned its colossal frame toward the edge of an empty system, and for the first time it showed what it carried within. A section of its hull opened like the eye of some ancient beast. Alien commanders leaned forward as a faint glow formed deep inside, brighter and brighter until space itself trembled. The glow grew into a sphere of pure energy, held in silence for only a breath before it surged forward into the void. The beam cut across the dark, striking a barren moon that hung quietly in orbit. The chamber erupted in panic as the moon tore apart in an instant, breaking into fragments that drifted lifelessly into the abyss. The silence that followed was heavier than the explosion. Every species present in the chamber had seen weapons before. They had seen planet crackers and ion storms, plasma waves and weapons of terrible invention. But nothing compared to this. What the Titan unleashed was not simply a weapon, but a statement. It did not target their fleets. It did not threaten their worlds. It chose a moon, a lifeless stone, as if to say that destruction of life was unnecessary to prove power. The council stared, unable to breathe as they realized the truth. Humanity had built a weapon strong enough to unmake worlds, and they had fired it not in war but in demonstration. The council speaker tried to speak, but his voice faltered. His words carried no weight against what they had seen. Some leaders shouted that it was a challenge, a threat too great to ignore. They demanded fleets be gathered, Every dreadnought sent, every weapon fired before the humans reached further. Others whispered in trembling tones that war would mean extinction, that to resist was to invite the destruction of every homeworld in the Council. Both sides argued with fire, but both were bound by fear. None could ignore what had been shown. On alien worlds far beyond the chamber, billions watched the same broadcast. Entire cities froze as the image of a moon shattering burned into their memories. Beings that had lived through centuries of peace now trembled in their homes, their children clutching their arms as if safety could be found in touch alone. The message spread faster than light. A young species had built a god of war, and it had chosen to show it before the galaxy. No empire, no council, no fleet could claim to hold such might. The balance of power was broken with a single shot. The Titan did not fire again. Its weapon closed, the glow fading until the ship was dark once more, drifting with calm silence. That silence crushed the chamber more than the weapon itself, for inaction meant choice, and choice meant purpose. Humanity had not struck them. Humanity had not demanded surrender. Humanity had only shown power, and left the question unanswered. What would come next? No alien mind could know. That unknowing was worse than war. Some whispered that perhaps the humans had only one such ship, that perhaps the Titan was alone, a desperate gamble from a desperate species. But even the bravest admiral would not risk believing it. If one ship existed, more could follow. If one weapon could shatter a moon, more could break a world. The Council understood now that they were no longer masters of the galaxy. They were prisoners of their own fear, bound not by chains but by the shadow of a ship that moved without hurry. The speaker called for silence once more, and his words came softer than before. He told the chamber they had seen the future. It was not the Council that guided the stars now. It was not the old empires that ruled with fleets and laws. The future wore a human name, and it drifted through their skies in the shape of a Titan. His words did not comfort them. They only deepened the truth already pressed into their bones. Humanity had claimed its place not with alliance, not with begging for entry, but with fear. The Titan moved again, slow and steady, turning away from the broken fragments of the moon as if its test was finished. Its silence stretched across the chamber, across the galaxy, a silence that spoke louder than war. Every counselor lowered their eyes, unable to meet the gaze of their peers because all of them carried the same thought. The galaxy had changed. It would never return to what it was before. The image of the moon breaking apart played again and again across alien worlds. Children saw it in their sleep. Leaders saw it in their councils. Warriors saw it in their dreams. No one would forget the moment a single human ship had silenced the galaxy. And as the Titan vanished slowly into the dark, every being who watched it understood the same truth. This was only the beginning. Humanity had shown a glimpse of its power, and the galaxy would never stop fearing what else they might hold in silence. The Titan Warship drifted silently in the void, a shadow greater than any empire's fleet. The council chamber remained heavy with dread, the memory of the shattered moon replaying again and again in their minds. No one dared to speak loudly. The admirals whispered among themselves, but none ordered an attack. The ship did not move with aggression. It did not prepare for battle. It simply floated as though it had all the time in the universe. That calm was what frightened them most. It was the calm of a predator that knew it had no rival. Then, without warning, the silence broke. A pulse rippled across space, softer than the one before, yet stronger in meaning. Screens lit up inside the chamber, and across every alien world tuned to the broadcast. A single image filled the displays. It was not of weapons nor of destruction, but of faces, human faces. Men and women, eyes unblinking, staring directly into the hearts of every watcher. They were not smiling, they were not threatening, they were simply present. The galaxy had never seen them like this before. A voice followed, deep and steady, carrying through every translator without distortion. It was not the voice of a machine, but of a human leader speaking with unshakable weight. The words were simple, spoken with the clarity of stone falling into water. Humanity had come not to beg for peace, not to ask for alliance, not to kneel before the council. They had come only to remind the galaxy that they existed. The voice declared that humanity was patient, but patience should never be mistaken for weakness. The chamber erupted into chaos. Some leaders shouted warnings, calling the message a declaration of dominance, a challenge that demanded response. Others sat frozen, staring into the human eyes on the screen as though trapped in a spell. For centuries, the Council had ruled with the belief that no species could rise beyond their reach. Yet here was a species that had once been dismissed, now speaking not as servants but as equals, or worse, as rulers. The message was short, almost painfully short, yet it carried more weight than all the long speeches the chamber had ever heard. Across alien worlds, the people listened in silence. Workers stopped their tasks, children stopped their play, entire armies stood motionless as the human words echoed into their minds. They felt something they could not describe, something heavier than fear yet sharper than respect. Humanity was not threatening them, not demanding anything, yet their very presence carried a promise. If the galaxy chose to challenge them, it would not survive the storm that followed. In the council chamber, the speaker tried to restore order, but his voice carried no strength. The image of the human faces lingered above them, eyes staring down like unblinking judges. Some counselors whispered that perhaps humanity sought entry into the council, that maybe this was only a show of strength before negotiations. But those words rang hollow. The humans had not asked for entry. They had not asked for recognition. They had only shown what they could do, and that was more powerful than any request. One admiral rose to speak, his scaled skin trembling as he pointed toward the screen. He warned that humanity's silence was more dangerous than their weapons. If they had come with threats, the Council could resist. If they had come with demands, the Council could negotiate. But they had come with nothing but proof of their power, leaving the Council to drown in its own uncertainty. That uncertainty was the weapon. It forced every leader to imagine what else the humans might be hiding. If one ship could do this, how many more might wait beyond? The message ended as suddenly as it had begun. The human faces faded, leaving only the warship in silence once more. No further words followed. The Council stared at the blank screens, desperate for more, desperate for clarity, but none came. Humanity had spoken, and now they waited, their meaning hanging heavy in the chamber like a blade suspended above them. Every leader felt it. Every soldier watching from afar felt it. Every being in the galaxy felt it. Humanity had forced them to listen and then had left them with nothing but silence to fill the space. The speaker lowered his head, and for the first time in centuries his voice trembled as he addressed the chamber. He said that the galaxy now stood at a crossroads. They could choose to see humanity as an enemy, to rise against them in a storm of fleets and fire, or they could choose to see humanity as something beyond enemy or ally, something that must be watched with both fear and respect. His words did not calm the chamber. They only deepened the divide. Some leaders whispered of alliance, hoping to bind humanity before it rose higher. Others whispered of war, desperate to crush humanity before more Titans appeared. But all of them, no matter what they said, carried the same thought in their minds. Humanity had shown them only a glimpse, and that glimpse was enough to unmake the balance of the galaxy. The fear of what had not yet been revealed was worse than the destruction of the moon. The Titan Warship remained in silence, drifting slowly as though it had not spoken at all. Yet every being who had heard the message knew that silence was only another form of speech. Humanity had proven its strength. Humanity had declared its patience. Now the galaxy waited to see what they would do next. And in that waiting, fear spread deeper than any weapon could reach. The council chamber, once the place where all power in the galaxy gathered, now felt like a prison. The leaders who once commanded fleets with a single word now sat in silence, unable to decide a single path forward. Humanity had not fired another shot, had not spoken another word, yet they had already won the first war, the war of fear. And in the stillness of the chamber, in the weight of unspoken dread, the council realized the truth. Humanity needed no allies, no armies, no pleas for respect. With a single message, they had already become the shadow over every world. The Titan Warship did not stay. It did not circle their worlds or press closer to their fleets. Instead, with the same calm it had carried since its arrival, it turned away. No threat, no warning, no final words. It drifted back into the abyss of space, its colossal frame shrinking slowly until the stars swallowed its shadow. The chamber of the council should have felt relief at its departure, yet no relief came. The silence it left behind was heavier than when it had first arrived. Because every leader, every soldier, and every civilian knew that what had been shown could never be forgotten. The council chamber sat frozen. Arguments no longer filled the air. No admiral rose to demand attack. No counselor stood to call for alliance. Instead, they stared into the empty screens where moments before the human faces had looked upon them. The absence of the warship was worse than its presence. When it was before them, at least they could see it. Now that it was gone, their imaginations filled the void with endless dread. Was it the only one? Were there fleets more massive waiting just beyond the reach of their sensors? Was the demonstration only a fragment of what humanity had built? No one knew, and that uncertainty clung to them like a second skin. On distant worlds across the galaxy, the broadcast ended. Yet the memory remained sharper than any scar. Families sat in silence, their eyes still wide as though the Titan's shadow still loomed above their homes. Children whispered the human name to each other, voices trembling as though speaking it too loudly might summon the ship again. Workers moved through their tasks in uneasy quiet, looking to the skies more than to their duties. Armies that once trained with confidence now carried hesitation in their drills, every soldier wondering if their weapons were worth anything at all. The warship had not touched a single life, yet it had reshaped every life it left behind. The speaker called for a final meeting before the chamber dissolved into despair. He reminded them that the council had endured countless threats before, from empires that sought conquest to disasters that threatened all life. Yet even as he spoke, his voice betrayed weakness. He told them they must act carefully, that war might bring the end of them all, that humanity must be studied and watched. But his words were hollow. Everyone in the chamber could feel it. They were no longer the center of power. Their laws, their fleets, their unity meant nothing against the silence of a single human ship. Fear crept into every decision after that day. When the council met to discuss trade, the whispers of humanity rose. When they debated war between minor powers, the question of what the humans might think silenced them. Even when disputes arose on distant borders, the shadow of the Titan hung over their choices. They began to ask themselves not only what was wise for the council, but what would be wise under the watching eyes of humanity. The humans did not speak again. They did not return, but their silence was louder than any fleet. Admirals grew restless. Some sought to build ships larger, weapons stronger, defenses thicker. They poured resources into projects that broke economies, yet nothing reached the scale of what they had seen. Engineers spoke of impossibility, that no known science could create what the humans had built. Others turned to politics, whispering that alliance was the only path, that to resist would mean extinction. But no one dared to send envoys. The humans had not invited them. The humans had not asked for friendship. The humans had left only a message. Patience mistaken for weakness would be a grave mistake. And so the galaxy waited, bound in fear, unable to act. The people changed most of all. On worlds filled with billions, statues were built not of their own leaders but of the dark silhouette of the Titan. Not in celebration, but in remembrance of fear. Songs were written in hushed tones. Tales passed to children warning them of the humans who walked in shadows greater than stars. Fear became culture woven into the lives of every being. And still, humanity remained silent, their warship unseen, yet their presence heavier than before.